You- Oh, yay.
Hi, Tennessee.
Hi, Chelsea. Hi, everyone. Based on my quick cursory glance, we do have quorum. I will pass it off to Jean-Luc
For
to
the jelly beans.
welcome us, meet people as they come in,
All
to
right.
welcome us, and I will just double check that we have quorum as he does that. And I will also, right now that we're all here, send you guys the agenda and let you guys know that we will be shifting it a little bit because we have Alex Meadow who can join us at the beginning. So we'll start with that and then we'll shift everything down by one. So, Jean-Luc, take it away.
Thank you for that, Hennessy, and welcome everybody. This is our quarterly meeting of the Commemoration Commission for the City of Boston. I believe some of you might have gotten, I believe all of you might have gotten that the email from Catherine earlier today talking about how this is our first meeting after the launch of Boston 250 and the revised ordinance. So plenty of changes in how we're moving, and we're definitely moving as things are going. And so, really excited to hear all of the different updates and get through this conversation with all of you. So welcome.
Thank you guys. I don't know if we need to do intros. I think we're okay. So I'll let Alex take it away. We're gonna just move him forward because he only has 30 minutes to be here. So he's gonna talk a little bit about the event on April 18th. And I'll let you take that away.
Great. Thanks, Hennessy. Good afternoon, everybody. For those who I have not met yet, Alex Meadow, Deputy Director for Partnerships here in the Mayor's Office in the City of Boston. And I have been working closely with many of my colleagues here in the city, as well as many of you, to build out what we're calling and what has now really launched as Boston 250, which is described on the Boston 250 website as a year-long commemoration of Boston's revolutionary role, not just in the 1700s, but throughout our history to present day. And Kathy and Hennessy asked me to come and sort of update on where we're at with all of that work and the launch event that occurred on April 18th. So I'm going to do that as briefly as possible, and then would love to just pause for questions and feedback from the commission. So a couple of things, we have been, since I last met with this body, a lot of things that I think have been raised and that ideas that came out of the Commemorations Commission have really come to fruition. So a lot of the things that we heard from you all in the past, I don't know, 9 months or so have been, we need a website, we need a branding umbrella, we need something that can sort of hold all of the varied activities under one, for lack of better term, under one roof, under one umbrella, that different organizations and entities throughout the city can leverage. And so we were really glad to be able to sprint towards launching the Boston 250 website, which launched in early April. You can find that at boston.gov/250. And Hennessy has been doing a really great job of sort of maintaining things there. And I think the one, Kathy shared the information about the website in her recent email, but I think one thing to just highlight there is just like the state website, there's a spot where you can submit events that your organizations or others that you know of are hosting and then get featured on the Boston 250 website. There's also a feature where if it's being featured on the Boston 250 website, it will also be on the like general boston.gov events page, it automatically links there. And I didn't know this, but there are like hundreds of thousands of visitors to the boston.gov website for all sorts of reasons, right? Paying your taxes, parking tickets, but also presents a great opportunity to make sure events get showcased. So if you haven't already submitted that form for any events that your organizations are running related to the 250th, that is a great, I just wanted to make that pitch. I'll shout out David Leonard and the Boston Public Library, as well as the Leventhal Map Center, just because I know they have a lot of programming in the works related to 250. They got all those events submitted, and now you can kind of see what your events can look like up there when it gets submitted. And I'm sure there will be more to come. I think, as we have heard from this commission, I'll just echo, we're defining 250th broadly. So some of the events that you'll see there are related to Paul Revere or William Dawes, but some of the events you'll see there are related to more recent revolutionary history in Boston. So just to give a shout out to our friends at Embrace Boston, where Hennessy is sharing this now, is Embrace Boston, alongside partners, are hosting the 60th anniversary of the 1965 MLK Freedom Rally in Boston. And so we view that as part of Boston 250. It wasn't 250 years ago, it was 60 years ago. But it is an example of the revolutionary DNA of Boston manifesting in a different way in 1965. And so events are broadly defined, and please submit them, and we will be in communication with you all on that. Okay. Sorry, Hennessy. No, go ahead.
Okay, do I keep sharing?
Oh, no. I thought you were going to say something.
No. I was just aiding you. You can keep going.
Oh, thank you. That was helpful visual aid. I don't think anyone needs to look at me for as long as right now. Okay. And then so April 18th, which was Friday evening, our hope there was that's like it's a huge moment in Boston's history, and it's really one of Boston's great claims to our role in the revolution was Paul Revere's ride. And so we wanted to make sure that the city showed up in a big way in kicking off our Boston 250 with an event in the North End and Charlestown with some great partners who had been planning for this for a very long time. And so I think we were successful. We got really great feedback across the board from residents, from partners, from press, on social media. I just want to, just to give a quick rundown, if you weren't able to make it, there was a series of events from the North End to Charlestown that started around 5 p.m. and didn't finish until maybe 10 p.m. With the illumination of Bunker Hill Monument. The Paul Revere House was doing education and reenactment. And then the program moved over to Old North Church. They held a lantern service with Heather Cox Richardson. The mayor stopped by there. Then at Paul Revere Mall, Old North Illuminated hosted a fantastic rendition of the Revolution's Edge play. And then we did the sort of big Boston 250 kickoff speaking program with the mayor, the governor. Jean-Luc opened it with an invocation that was beautiful and sort of spoke to important histories that can't be ignored during this moment. A number of I'll finish the timeline and then shout out some more partners, but speaking program, Boston Pops, and then there was a lantern procession. Some might have called it a stampede more than a procession. From Hanover Street down to Langone Park on the waterfront. We had our first ever drone show over Boston Harbor depicting Paul Revere's ride and contextualizing it. we had Paul Revere himself row to Charlestown. And then Charlestown had already been doing a number of things. The Constitution Museum was doing lantern making and programming. And once Paul arrived, he made his way to City Square. Our own Joe Bagley gave a talk. Paul went into various establishments in Charlestown and eventually rode his horse off into the sunset. So I want to make sure, and Hennessy, I can work with you on just making sure we get like the speaking program video and the video.
yeah.
Actually, the City of Boston YouTube channel just uploaded the drone show video with sound, so we can circulate that. And I'm sure others here have video and photos. Amanda sent me one of the coolest photos I've seen, which was the drone show from Bunker Hill Monument. I just want to say a few things. Thank you to Joe Bagley, Amanda Zettel, Suzanne Taylor, Jean-Luc, Amari Paris Jeffries, Michael Creasy, who I saw is on the call here. The NPS team in Boston has been working for a long time with partners to make sure that this event went off well. And as I think most of us know on this call, under increasingly difficult circumstances given the federal environment. So I just appreciate all of the work from members here and different partners that came together to make the night possible. I think last but not least, I'll just round this out by saying we feel like it was an important way to kick off the 250th Boston 250, because it's obviously not the kickoff. We had the massacre and we had the Tea Party, and there's been a number of things already happening. But now the work is how do we make sure that there are more events and more good moments and more recognition and commemoration and some lasting impact of all of this work. And so that is where we'll turn next. And that's where we're looking to you all for support and leadership. And last but not least, I did mention the MLK Freedom Rally. It's coming up this Saturday. And so I think, I'm not sure if Amari or some Embrace Boston colleagues are on right now, but we'll make sure to share the information about that rally, which is happening on Saturday as well. And really it's to commemorate Dr. King's 20,000 person march here in Boston, but also to uplift that the demands of that march, which are around economic justice and educational justice, are still very much present demands in today's society. And so hope folks can join for that. Oh, hi, Esther. Esther just put the link to it in the chat. So the mayor will be there, I'll be there, and I hope others can join us as well. Hennessy, Kathy, anyone else who was there Friday have anything else you want to add? Otherwise, I'm happy to like open it up for questions.
Yeah, I'll add, I will also send, I know Esther just sent something, but I will also send an email with that flyer, with the link, and also with the boston.gov link so that you guys can all get there. Good question. I would leave that to Alex. But I will say I sat down and I passed out lanterns. I actually brought my sister. And I saw Amanda, she brought my sister, and I had to employ my sister to pass out those lanterns because people were very excited, and we did not have enough. So I think turnout was great. I think we need to think bigger scale because people were very excited, and I saw, online on TikTok, I kept seeing it. People were very excited about Boston 250 and being part of something like this. So it was very exciting.
I'll echo that as well and just say that I thought in light of the inundation of people on Paul Revere Mall, that everyone involved and who really was represented a lot of the infrastructure around that place and the program, including our friends at Old North Church, the Park Service, and such, were really cool under pressure. There was a lot going on out there, and the volunteers were terrific. And everybody representing their various organizations, did them very proud. Oh, and Suzanne was there. You did great too.
Oh, we can open it now to everyone else. So if you guys have
What?
any comments or questions or feedback.
I just wanted to make sure Alex did not mention Boston Harbor Now, which was a huge part of Friday night as well. So shout outs to Rebecca.
Sure were. Let's not forget the city and all they did. Alex, you talked a lot about everybody else, but not the city and your team, Amy and her team, everybody. It was a big effort and everybody was involved. So thank you to everybody.
But I want to know from Amanda how we get a beer glass if we didn't quite make it over to Charlestown.
I happen to have some extras, so you know where to find me. Yeah, I mean, it was
Great.
the comments in Charlestown was that no one can remember ever seeing that many people in Charlestown. It was a huge success. I mean, people filled Main Street all the way for blocks and blocks. So it was a huge turnout, and everyone is asking when we will do it again. So we've started saying,
Next year.
no. Maybe I think Boston 400 is the polite answer, which would mean 29, because it would be April 29 is, kicks that off. So that's what we're shopping around. So
To answer the question, I can't effectively answer the question in the chat, David. But we did talk as a planning group and did a debrief on Tuesday, and between the North End and Charlestown and the fact that both were packed the entire night. And I'm just thinking about the drone show where like we had Langone totally packed. The baseball field was packed. There were people teaming over Copp's Hill. The Washington Street Bill Russell Bridge was packed. We were conservatively estimate. Did we estimate, Amanda? Was it 20,000? We thought maybe 10,000 on each side participated in something throughout the evening.
I think 20,000 is low, but we could defend that number. So I'm going with like 30. I mean, I've never seen so many people. The Charlestown side, all of Pier 1 was completely full. The marina, I mean, people were coming out of the woodwork. I mean, I can't believe how many people were on the waterfront. And then everyone poured into City Square, and there were so many people that we could not handle any more people in City Square. So that's why kind of Main Street kept getting more and more full, is because people just couldn't get in and had to keep going down. So that's a lot of people. It was a lot. And I think we sorely underestimated how many people would be excited about this and come over. So I think that's something big to keep in mind for Boston 400 is we need a lot more resources. All of the barricades, for example, were at the marathon. That would have been helpful to have, like barricades, more security presence, a medical tent. We had a couple of like lost children, medical emergencies that all turned out fine and were handled well. But it could have been worse. I'm still, waking up in the middle of the night thinking like, oh gosh, we barely got through that by the skin of our teeth. So just a lot to consider for a next sort of historical event, because I know we were kind of surprised by more people than we thought for the Tea Party reenactment also. So just keep in mind that, history turns out tourists. So it's a great result.
Well, I think that's actually a very important point, because I think a lot was going on in our city over the last weekend, and we may have actually underestimated how many people might pour out for this, combined with visitors from out of town for the marathon and all. So something to sort of keep an eye on next time around in our planning, at least on our end. I could say that.
But with all the tourists, we got a ton of press. I mean, I had people calling from California and Maryland and all over the country saying, "Is this the event you're involved in? I had no idea this was so big." So that's pretty cool. A wide reach.
Great.
The other thing I might just add briefly on like messaging is that I think that at least what I observed and the feedback that I got, but would love to hear from others on this, is that our sort of message that this is around that it is important to commemorate and understand our history and our past, the good and the bad and the ugly of it, and sort of similarly take a broader lens to that and think about what is it that is Boston centric that makes us strong, unique, revolutionary, etc. I think that resonated well with people. It is a tricky environment federally right now to be putting, drones in the sky depicting the United States with red, white, and blue American flag. It's not for everyone right now, but I think what landed for people is the like celebrating Boston's role here and what we are today and what we can be and what we strive to be. I think that landed for people. Because I wouldn't have necessarily expected, well, I don't know. It was also uh, different walks of life, people coming from different walks, right? Some are tourists, some are history buffs, some were, Boston Public Schools students. And so I'm not sure what I expected, but I think we hit the right tone with the message there. And I'd love to get feedback from others if they had thoughts on that as well.
Kenzie?
Yeah, I just wanted to agree. I thought I was with a group of people who did both sides, like did the north end and then walked over the bridge. There was an insane number of people on the bridge and then ended up in City Square. And I think that, I mean, I think that the inclusivity of the message landed well. I also think that like people are in a somewhat defiant mood right now, and that the nature of this like event really hit in that way too with people. And it was interesting. I think the electeds on both sides of the line like did a good job of like they were very clearly sort of referencing that, but it was just kind of like in the realm of not making things too awkward, hopefully for our National Park Service folks and any of that, like I just think it balanced well, and I felt like that was, you heard a lot of positive reaction in the crowd. I just wanted to echo though what Amanda said. I did feel like we got quite lucky. The crowd was very well behaved. And even when we had like, the stampede to the waterfront was sort of moderate. It was actually, I think it got a lot better once the drums started going because they gave people something of a like pace for walking. But it definitely felt like if it had been dark a little earlier, or if like people had, if it had been Saturday night instead of Friday night, it felt like we could have been, just as someone who's been in a lot of crowds, like it felt like it was a very well behaved crowd, and one wouldn't necessarily want to like count on that. So it did feel to me like maybe like working together to over plan a little bit for, thinking about Bunker Hill or anything that's gonna maybe be a similar flashpoint coming forward be good.
Dr. Trent, then John Luke.
Yeah, I thought the event on Friday was great. I do echo the concerns around security. DC kid here, so I've been to plenty of large events with large crowds, and quite honestly, I was shocked at the lack of bike racks, law enforcement presence, even private security to manage stuff. I mean, it was a miracle that that little girl who got lost and Alex, I saw you talk to Latoya and pass the note. And it's a miracle we found her as quickly and as easily as we did. That could have gone some other direction. And so I think that security has to be paramount of the conversation. This was an extraordinarily well-behaved crowd. They told people to be quiet and stay still, and they did, and that like never happens. So I think that's incredibly important that we were very gracious and blessed to have that sort of mentality with the supporters who were there. But we cannot assume that. And so I was just surprised, and I live right next to TD Garden. So right now, like trying to get down, I'm on Canal Street. Trying to get from Canal Street to the Garden right now when the Celtics are playing is a little bit complicated because you have so many different barriers and things like that. The same thing with the playoffs last year. That is always in place. And so I think that that's something that we have to absolutely plan much better on. In terms of the messaging, I thought that the messaging was really good. I thought that it threaded the line very well and echoed something that I've seen happen in other meetings around the 250th, which is referencing history and using that as an act of defiance in this particular moment. I do think that we as a committee need to think about what is the city stance going to be, right? And where is the line? I think we've gotten very clear direction from the governor and the mayor, so I don't want to acquiesce too much, but there is a line, and I don't think that we should push back, step away from that. I thought every speaker that night did a great job of saying this is who we are. We resist tyranny. And people took that sentiment and ran with it. And it was the same thing that happened in Lexington on Saturday. And so I get where people's concerns are, but I think we've seen some very clear direction of where our stance is as a community. And I think we need to lean into that, but do it in a way, I think maintaining the balance that has been happened would be really great, because it does make a difference, and it I think it will be what will draw people to Boston rather than DC in 26. I think a lot more people are not feeling comfortable going to DC as a venue, and I've got family in DC who are saying they don't think that the crowds are going to go to DC. They feel like they were like, Noel, the crowds may be coming to you guys in Boston, going to Philadelphia. And so that's something that we should take in consideration, that the vibe of tourism on the ground in that area has shifted, and we may be receiving some of that. So we should also embrace that as well.
That's a great point, Noel. Thank you. Jean-Luc?
Yeah, just very briefly, hearing this conversation, I pulled up the dates for the World Cup, and we're looking at June 13th to July 9th in terms of like that window of time. And so the international community is going to have its eye and also have a presence here. And so this is going to be, that much more like the messaging of like how this is part of world heritage, world history. Those are definitely things that we're going to have to kind of contend with in terms of like where our country is next year at that time, and the relationships that we have with the rest of the world. History is really important. It really matters like what we do with it, and the voices that we have on the stage. I was glad to be there. I wish that the crowds perhaps reflected a little bit more about who the voices were that were on stage. And I think that we have to, continue to go back to our communities and, do things like, what Amari and Embrace are doing in terms of like everybody 250. Like there is this is not just about celebrating. This is about telling the truth and giving people a platform to speak about, what's going on in community today. So that's, all of those things are really important. But yeah, we definitely need to kind of contend with the public safety factors, given, what we observed from the launch, and then, seeing, a very different setting for the finale, I think is going to be really important for us for next year.
Thank you guys. This was great. Alex, I know you have to go, we can end that there, unless you have any final thoughts.
No, I just appreciate the commission and all of the partners, and I see Commissioner Santiago's here too, and he was there. So, all of this feedback is super helpful. And sorry I have to leave, but I look forward to what comes next out of the commission, because, like I said, much of what Boston 250 is informed by the conversations that happen here. So, thank you, everybody, and I'll talk to you soon. Thanks, Hennessy.
Thanks, Alex. Thanks. Okay, now that I know that we have a quorum, we have 2 meeting minutes to approve. We have the one from January and the one from October. So if I can just get a motion in a second, and then we can move that forward.
Motion.
Amazing. Thank you, Amanda.
Second.
Thank you, guys. All right, great. So we can not worry about that. And then we just have updates next for updates of the subcommittees. And I will say that in March, all of the subcommittees met to talk about a memo, not a memo, but just of some recommendations and some ideas. Kathy has better wording around this, of a catalog for ideas around the 250 and around the 400, and just generally around commemorative activities and activations that the city can undertake. So I will say that that is what we all met about in March. Let's blink it. And then in April, we had the ordinance go through its amendments in city council. So we hadn't met. The only group that met, I think, was Events, Exhibits, and Trails to talk to the North End Black Heritage Trail team. And before that, it was quiet as well. We had the Boston Women's Heritage Trail come and talk to the Events, Exhibits, and Trail team, because we are thinking through trails and what that would look like and how the Commemoration Commission might sponsor that. I'm sorry, I know I said that I would have the co-chairs, do it, but I think this is quick because it's been a while. And then in the Legislation and Preservation Tools subcommittee, we had a discussion about the historic and resource survey in February, and the groups that we might invite to come and speak to us in the future. And then Timelines, Archives, and Curricula talked about BPS and how we want to align and move forward with the archives project. So that was that. If I'm missing anything, please, co-chairs and commission and subcommittee members, let me know. But I think I got it all. But if not, then we can move on to this presentation. I made a presentation so we can review the ordinance amendments. I made a presentation in October to discuss what that might look like, and we voted on that as well. So now this presentation will just walk through the changes that I sent out in an email, just to talk a little bit more about what that can look like, and just an open discussion. So I will share my screen. Let's see if I have it open. 1 second. Oh, of course, I just exited out of it. No. Great. All right, and you guys tell me if you can see my screen. Okay, so this is just, we're gonna do an ordinance update review. It passed earlier this month, and we're just gonna talk about it a little bit more. Okay, so this is the language that we voted on in 2024. The staff recommends that the Commemoration Commission ask the City Council to make the following modifications to the ordinance: that some ex officio city staff representative be moved from commission members to advisory, to better manage required attendance, to achieve quorum, and that subcommittees be made advisory committees to allow more frequent and flexible working sessions with commission members, city staff, and subject matter experts as needed. Advisory committee's work would inform the recommendations of the commission. So this is what we voted on. And based on what we voted on, here is what has changed. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is the changes in membership. This changed our quorum from 23 to 20, which doesn't seem like a lot, but anything counts in terms of this is for the larger commission. So the changes for the appointed members is that it created an appointed seat for Embrace Boston, which current or not currently, but previously they were serving as as an alternate or a designee for the Office of Economic Opportunity, but this creates a permanent seat for them. It reduces the number of archivists. Oh, it says 2 from 3 to 2 because we had 3 archivists, and one of them was Dory Klein, and she's great, but she is now going to be working through the ex officio role of the Boston Public Library, because she works very closely with David. And then it changes 1 member representing a neighborhood historic district into 1 member representing a neighborhood with a historic district. And that broadens it so that it's not just a Boston, a historic district under the Landmarks Commission, but it can be a historic district that is like national. So it can be a national historic district or a Boston historic district. And it also changes 1 member involved in local history in a neighborhood without a historic district into 1 member involved in history in a Boston neighborhood without a local historic district. So that makes it a little bit more, I think, more clear that it has to be someone who doesn't have a neighborhood historic district under the Boston Landmarks Commission. So for the ex officio members, it introduces the Office of Historic Preservation officially. It removes the executive director and the chair of the Boston Landmarks Commission. But that does not mean that these people still cannot come to our meetings and participate. It also removes the planning department, the environment, energy, and open space cabinet member, because we think with the Office of Historic Preservation that represents a lot of these interests. It removes the Boston Public Schools. It reduces the number of national parks representatives from 3 to 1. It updates the language from economic development to the Office of Economic Opportunity Inclusion. It removes tourism, sports, and entertainment. They are under that Office of Economic Opportunity, and that is changes in membership. So I'll stop here and ask if we have any questions before I move on. Okay, doesn't seem like it, so move forward. Okay, so the subcommittees go from subcommittees into stakeholder groups, and I wanted to talk a little bit about the differences between the subcommittees and stakeholder groups. Both are structured by theme, but the subcommittees did take official votes, whereas stakeholder groups don't take official votes. Subcommittees couldn't deliberate or take votes without quorum, whereas stakeholder groups can do business regardless of attendance. So there doesn't need to be a majority amount of people in that stakeholder group for us to do business and talk about our what we are going to do. The subcommittees did have deadlines for recommendations. As we know, Timelines, Archives, and Curricula had 6 months. Legislation Preservation Tools had 18, and I think Events, Exhibits, and Shows had a year, if I'm not mistaken. Whereas stakeholder groups can share ideas and recommendations to the commission and to relevant departments in the city in a non-binding fashion and as they come. So it makes it easier to flow and have these conversations and work towards the 400th. And so for the subcommittees, the membership was made up of commission members, whereas stakeholder groups don't have an official membership structure. So it can have members of the commission, but it can also be open to other members of organizations, of the public, as we see fit and as we think makes the most sense. They don't need to be sworn in or anything like that. So it's looser in their membership structure, which is great. Subcommittees are subject to open meeting law, whereas stakeholder groups are not, but we will probably still have meetings that are open to the public as normal. It just means that we are able to have more open communication and be able to plan things in a way that's not so, beholden to the meeting structures that we have now. And then for the stakeholder groups, The one thing that is important to note is that a quorum of commissioners, so the Commemoration Commission members, cannot communicate with stakeholder groups or attend stakeholder meetings. So if there's less than a quorum of commissioners, then we should be all right. But a quorum of commissioners then makes it a public meeting. So we would want to avoid having a quorum of commissioners, because if it's not properly noticed, then it's a violation of open meeting law. So we'd want to make sure that either it's a publicly noticed meeting or it's under the quorum. Okay, and then other changes, great. Other changes are that it shifts the Commemoration Commission from an implementation role to an advisory role. Commemoration Commission co-chairs are elected every 2 years instead of every year. And the staffing language, it's a very minute change, but I'll read it out anyway because I think it's important. It changed from the equivalent of 2 full-time staff, 1 half-time staff person to coordinate the commission as a whole, and 1 half-time staff person to coordinate each of the 3 above subcommittees, into the equivalent of 2 full-time staff, with these staff persons to be drawn from such city departments as may be most appropriate. So it doesn't necessarily say what the 2 staff members have to do, but it does give some flexibility about the needs, for us to talk through the needs of the commission and how another staff person might support the needs. And then it changes from, you need to provide recommendations in X amount of time, and it says that it will provide relevant departments with reports and recommended actions, which is similar to what the subcommittees I think have been discussing and doing, but it really cements that into the language of the ordinance. And that is it. I can go back as needed, but I just wanted to open it up to questions, concerns, and feedback.
I say well done, Hennessy. That's a lot, and it will make it easier to operate.
Thank you.
It's a lot of work that you got done.
You should have told Ray better. Anybody else? Any questions? Any concerns? Or any feedback that's good? It doesn't have to be concerned.
All good feedback.
Tennessee, sorry, I'm looking desperately for my hand raising function. Is there anything that just in the coming round of committee meetings or anything like that that changes and that you would like to that people should be on the lookout for?
So that's a good question. I think I wanted to open that to discussion because I think the upcoming, advisory meetings will be what we make of it. So, maybe I can keep this on, or I can stop sharing it so we can talk more face to face, because I wanted more feedback on on what you all thought these things could be. Because as of now, we had one of the subcommittee, or I guess advisory, I should, change our language, but stakeholder group meetings in April from events, exhibits, and trails. But it went as normal, it was a publicly noticed meeting. It was open to the public, and it was the same as it kind of has always been. But I think the question that I will open to you all is what it might look like when it's not necessarily open to the public, right? What really we want to accomplish in those meetings that might not be open to the public, whereas any meeting that we move forward with will generally be open to the public unless otherwise, stated. So I guess I'll open that to you all, and then we can talk a little bit more about what that might look like. Maybe I'll stop sharing.
Hennessy, I might be missing something, but because I did come in late to the meeting, my apologies. So I think for points of clarity, who's commissioners who's now moved over to stakeholders, have folks been identified already? Did we receive those notices? If you've changed, if you haven't received anything, you're good. Is that essentially what we're talking about? Okay.
Yeah, basically,
Okay.
if you have been an appointed member, you are still an appointed member. So you're still a commissioner. The only difference is the creation of an appointed seat for Embrace, and they've received that information. And The archivists we've also had that discussion with them. So essentially, and ex officios have also been talked to. So essentially, yes, if you have not received a notification, that means that you are not being removed or in any capacity, and you are also still part of a stakeholder group. They are, I should have clarified with the stakeholder groups being structured by theme means that mm, is still, it means that there are three stakeholder groups that are still the events, exhibits, and trails stakeholder group, legislation preservation tools stakeholder group, and timelines, archives, and curricula. There is also, when it was when they were subcommittees and when they were stakeholder and now stakeholder groups, there is still the possibility of making new groups as needed based on theme, but they are still they remain basically very similar. Yeah, Lydia.
Really sure that stakeholder group or committee makes a huge difference in terms of, the public notice and, being a subject to open meeting law. I think what might make a difference, not between those two categories, but for us to think about the committees or the stakeholder, whatever meetings, more like in advance, planning it with a little more planning in advance by the whole committee to think about, are there other people we want to bring into those discussions
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
may not be on the commission?
Absolutely. And
But I
think
feel
with
like whether it's open or not open, it's not a big deal to us.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that the stakeholder groups, Karen wrote the word committee means the meetings must be publicly noticed. That's good to know. So I think there's stakeholder groups. I think that's the language that's being used in the ordinance. But I think that's a great point because the stakeholder groups allow for that kind of discussion around who else can be part of it and be not just um in the meeting as a member of the public, but also as someone who can be an active participant in the planning of things. So it's a good point, and it's probably a discussion to have moving forward to identify who else might be or what other organizations might have somebody who would be a good resource for these stakeholder groups. So maybe that's something that in the coming meetings that we have scheduled, we can talk about and really work to identify and make, and I agree with your point, Lydia, about making larger plans and really thinking more strategically and long term. And the hope with this is that we can make longer term strategic plans that we can also discuss and plan out more thoroughly because we are able to talk to each other and move plans forward outside of publicly noticed meetings.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a really good development. It generates more flexibility, removes some bureaucracy, and doesn't sacrifice any transparency for that purpose. So it means I think we'll be able to do more work more effectively, more quickly. And even though it may feel like, well, Boston 250 has kicked off, this is a commemoration commission work that will persist for the next several years. So, maybe we did have to learn a lot over the last year and a half, but it doesn't mean it's not going to serve the next 2 to 3 years going into 2030 very, very well, and in fact, much better. So those are just my thoughts.
I agree, David. I think that's perfectly articulates the goal here. I'll stop sharing. Do we have any final comments? Any other concerns? If not, that's
I would
okay.
just recommend that we be as transparent as possible with meetings as much as possible. I mean, I think the stakeholder thing makes it easier for work to get done, but I don't think that we go from having publicly noticed agendas and meetings unless absolutely necessary. And I just say that from a making sure the community has the opportunity to opt in as much as possible.
Yeah.
So we could keep that as a high percentage of what our meetings are doing. So that there's not a big change. It's just we don't get hung up on not having quorum and things can still happen, right? I think that's what's important for us to do, because otherwise, if we then go from being very open and doing this thing for business, but then we become very opaque, but then it looks like we're covering something up, and that's not the thing that we want to communicate to folks.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think as much as we can be transparent, as much as we can keep these meetings open, it's for the best, especially because we can get those that engagement that we don't get with the public if we make them I don't want to say private, but if we don't keep them open. So it opens up avenues for us to have and move forward some things while also allowing us to keep that kind of public engagement. So fingers crossed. Chelsea, is your hand up?
I cannot find the raise hand function today. I don't know why. It's just not showing up. I'm sorry. I agree with you. However, I will say one example of where this is super useful for us is to be able to have like small working sessions where we don't want to like have to drag everyone along with us. And I would just say I can't wait to get back to working on Article 85 with my subcommittee. But that is not something that is like terribly interesting for a lot of people to go through. So I think in that case, this is a perfect setup. And so thank you again for doing it.
Yeah. I see it's the Massachusetts tribe. I think it's Ferris, but
Yes, it's me. Thank you. I just want to be cautious here that, that we don't invite the public to any meetings. I think, I don't want to really understand what keeping it open means. Because for me, like an open meeting means it's open for people to attend. Perhaps, I know we shouldn't invite them to all meetings. We can't do that. I mean, but I just don't want to get caught up with not having, not inviting the public to any meetings. Because then no matter what our attention is, it's going to be looked at as, and we're not really being open with the public. Like perhaps maybe the quarterly meetings. I mean, if we're talking about, Boston's 400th, perhaps, 4 meetings a year that inviting the public to so that they can see what's going on firsthand. But I just want to make sure we don't get caught up with not inviting the public to any meetings. Thank you.
oh yeah. No, Ferris, totally. All Commemoration Commission meetings remain open to the public. So they have to be properly noticed. We have to have a quorum. We have to do all of those things that we have always had to do for these meetings to run as they should. So that will still be the same method of public engagement. In addition, those stakeholder groups, the intention is not to make them private. The intention is so that we can have discussions that move things forward. And I don't think that we necessarily will go from public to suddenly we're not publicly noticing anything. I think it's much more similar to what Chelsea said, in which if there's something that needs to be a working meeting, something that we need to really boggle down and continue to have collaboration outside of those meetings, we can do that. And then continue to have public meetings for both the Commemoration Commission and those stakeholder groups. Yes, Margaret added, she put in the chat, could we commit to providing notice of all meetings but allow working together between meetings? And I think yes, I just didn't want to add working meetings on top of the monthly meetings we already had. So I guess it's up to you guys, because obviously these are volunteer roles, so I don't want to inundate, but it is possible to do working meetings in between, or we have, we align with the Commemoration Commission schedule being 3 months, and we have 3 meetings, and the stakeholder groups always have 3 meetings within that time period. So it's possible that we have 2 meetings that are open and one that's a working session, so that we can work and then provide the public with a more fleshed out plan. But it's open to suggestion. You guys are also able to decide and dictate what that might look like. So it doesn't have to be So it could be that we have more meetings, or it could be that we assign one of those meetings to be a working session. And the working session could also be publicly noticed if we think that it's not, if we think it's perfectly fine to move forward that way.
Yeah, Hennessy, I think I was thinking more the ability to like edit documents jointly or review documents as a
Totally.
small group without having to have a formal meeting to have any kind of conversation with each other.
Yes.
It's that ability to keep work moving between meetings,
Mm-hmm.
and getting input from people between meetings,
Mm-hmm.
that um, the decision making will happen at the meetings,
Mm-hmm.
with public input in public view, but the preparing for the decisions, um, getting backup, getting a sense of a logical approach, getting some alternatives ready, that sort of work, which can happen very organically between meetings
Mm-hmm.
without, where maybe if we're doing it asynchronous, not at the same time. Um, Lost myself halfway through that word. Uh, Particularly for volunteers, the ability to fit it in,
Mm-hmm.
when they have the time to do it, as opposed to being required to show up when other people have the time,
Mm-hmm.
can be helpful. Um, but I agree, it's important to keep the decision making really public.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I agree with I think that's the goal, that we allow for asynchronous modes of communication, and also that maybe that can be the case where if we are working on the same modality as the Commemoration Commission, meeting quarterly, and we know we have 3 meetings, a monthly meeting every month for those 3 months, maybe we have one that's a working session and the other two that are public, so that the people can be informed about, hey, we've been working asynchronously. We had a working session, and whether we open or close that open session is, or that working session is up to you all. But then we invite the public to, review our work, comment on it, and give us more feedback in that regard. So I think that we have a lot of options in how we format this and shape this, and it is up to you all how you guys think that that works best. So we can continue to have that conversation and have it publicly in our next meetings in May. That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the problem we were trying to solve, not to speak for everybody, but in my opinion, was not so much whether to be public or not, but rather the quorum obligations that turned into ensuring you had the right number of official members in order to even meet at all. So
Yep.
I think we're in the right space.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll leave it to final comments, and if not, then I'll pass it up to Kathy. Yeah. Okay, Kathy, want to take it away?
Yep. I'm just doing a quick update on markers. I'm just looking for my agenda. My goodness, what happened to it? Well, anyway, some of you have participated in a conversation around or refining and sort of identifying some of the issues that might surface in what seems to be a broad-based goal of establishing a citywide historic marker program. We have not necessarily come back to meet yet, but I think the most important message I wanted to give is that there seems to be burgeoning interest in funding such an effort. And so that there's an opportunity to make what we have been talking about a little bit more manifest in the coming months. There will be more that comes with this, but I want to be clear that the matters that we still need to sort out about everything from how we would accept nominations or seek out places, people, events to be marked, what the marker itself looks like, what the relationship is with existing markers that are already placed around the city, and what the relationship is with programs that exist or are planned for marking historic places around the city already, how those might be embraced, are matters that still need to be worked out. No work has been developed around that in any detail that we're ready to report. But I think we can pretty well say that we're going to be pulling some of you back together again to have yet another working meeting with a little bit more seriousness about how we embark on this, because there seems to be both corporate and philanthropic interest in supporting such a program at the scale that I think we had hoped we would be able to embark on. So I hate to dangle something in front of you and not have a whole lot more to give you, but the good news is that there isn't a whole lot more to present to you at this juncture. But I suspect there will be in the coming couple of months, and I will look forward to speaking with some of you who've already participated, but I'm sure we will make any broader discussions more widely available to everybody in this call. But happy to entertain questions that to the extent that I can answer at this point. But I wanted to just make sure that you had an update on that, and that the previous conversation we had did not go for naught. Okay.
Well, I just wanted I have a funny anecdote if you have a minute. I had a call yesterday or on Tuesday from a developer in the North End who, in my experience of him, has demolished two historic buildings. But he let me know that he is working on a prototype for a marker for a building that he grew up in, and he wanted to submit it to us for review. And I said I would be very happy to look at it, but we don't review them currently. So maybe we'll have a good prototype to look at. He's a funny guy, and he cracked me up. He was like, "The building I demolished, I want to make a commemorative plaque for it."
My God.
I was like, "Awesome, Michael. Thank you."
Well, I will say we do hear a lot in our department around markers for a lot of reasons, but often when people are planning markers and content, they will contact us because they think somehow officially someone at the city must review these for appropriateness, accuracy and that sort of thing. And of course, we typically have no jurisdiction over any of that. We first look at the art commission and suggest maybe they check in there, but more often than not, we just read them through out of interest more than anything.
Exactly. Yeah, he really wanted me to review it. I was like, I can't, but thank you.
And if we don't have any other comments, Sarah, she let me know just to mention that the Historic Preservation Month and Boston City Hall Landmark Designation event is happening in 2 weeks. It's May 7th. And I don't know if they've sent it out, but I will follow up once they do with the just to push that forward and support that event. It's an Eventbrite, so Sarah, I know you're here, but
Thanks, Hennessy. So for those who haven't met me, my name is Sarah Lawton. I currently serve as a preservation assistant for the Office of Historic Preservation. Thank you for putting the Eventbrite link in there. We did send that out, so please feel free to check your email. RSVPs are still open. The event will be hosted at Boston City Hall from 5:30 to 7:30. Just kicking off Historic Preservation Month and also celebrating the landmark designation of Boston City Hall. So we hope that you all can attend, join us. Feel free to share it with people as well. Still a lot of tickets, so share with your networks, share with your staff if you all have staff, and we can hope to see you there in person. Thanks, Tennessee.
Thank you, Sarah.
And there'll be food.
Suzanne?
I just want to mention on the same evening, there's an event at the Commonwealth Museum. I don't have the details of it, but I know that it's at 7 o'clock that night. So just as an FYI.
Thanks for letting me know. I can plug that as well. And I follow up. Okay. Any final comments about the markers or just in general for Kathy or myself to take away? Okay, if not, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you. Can I get a second?
Second.
Great. Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate you all taking the time to be here with us, and I look forward to our next conversations.
Thank you, Hennessy. Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks,
Bye,
everybody.
everybody. Take care.
All right. Thanks.